My new book, To Light a Fire in the Earth, began really with Gary Jansen, who's one of the editors over at Random House. And he approached me and John Allen. John Allen is one of the most respected journalists in the English-speaking Catholic world. And the idea was for John and me to sit down and have a conversation about my life and my work and how I engage the culture and how I evangelize, and then we do a book kind of on the basis of those conversations. So he proposed it to me, and I said, yeah, I'd love it. If we get John Allen, I'd be thrilled. He proposed to John, and evidently John was very open to it as well. So it happened. And then John came out to my house in Santa Barbara, and we had about 25 hours of conversation. It was intense over several days. I think he came out 2 separate times, and we really went after it, you know. And then we generated, you know, a lot of just material from these conversations, eventually edited it down to the form it has in the book. But we tried to keep as much as possible the conversational tone, so it doesn't just read like a, you know, prepackaged sort of thing. And I was just very pleased with how it came out, but that's how the book started. The nuns, right? The N-O-N-E-S. All the people, especially young people, who are leaving the church, leaving the practice of the faith. The book, in some ways, is designed for them. I'd be thrilled if someone who's left the faith picked it up and maybe got a different take on the church. It's, I think, of great value for anyone involved in teaching, in preaching, in catechizing. I think it's helpful to any parent or grandparent that might be interested in reaching out to a family member who's wandered away. And I think more broadly, anybody interested in the dialogue between the church and the culture, I think would find things of interest in this book. Really like how I do my work as an evangelist in the culture. So I think anyone interested in that question would be benefited by the book. Well, evangelization is key right now, first because the popes have called us to it. So coming up out of Vatican II, you've got Paul VI, then John Paul II, Benedict, now Francis, all calling us to the same thing, which is the new evangelization. So I think for any Catholic who's following the leadership of the popes, that's the key thing. But also I think for anybody who's the least bit attentive to the ecclesial and cultural situation today, that realizes so many have fallen away from the practice of the faith. There's a secularism rampant in our society. There's a sense in the minds of many that God doesn't matter. Charles Taylor's buffered self holds sway, right? The self that's just sort of caved in around itself, buffered from any contact with the transcendent. The church's job, see, is to break holes in the buffered self. It's to try to break through people's resistance to God. And that's what that book is all about, really. That's what John Allen asked me about over and over again, is how do you do that? So I think anybody interested in that question will be interested in this book. You know, one unique feature of this book is toward the end, John and I talk about the Word on Fire movement. And this is my vision for what Word on Fire could become. So to this time, it's been a ministry in the church, I think a good one, an important one. But I see something more. I want Word on Fire to become more like a religious movement, where we draw people in, using our internet outreach, but draw people in, especially lay people, and ask them to dedicate themselves to a certain style of life, centered around evangelization, to become themselves evangelizers. And my hope is that we could provide for these people willing to make this commitment a specialized training and formation. So we want to get speakers and great teachers that would give privileged access to those who sign up for the movement. The idea there, see, I want this to go on beyond me. If it's just my work and it's a ministry that helps me propagate it, that's fine. But I have a bigger vision than that. I want it to go beyond just me. I want it to become a catalyst for a national, even international movement. Because if we're going to solve this problem, we all got to get involved. It can't just be isolated figures, such as myself, preaching and teaching. We have to galvanize Catholics in great numbers around the world to evangelize in their families and in their homes and in their places of work and everywhere in the culture, you know. I think, you know, for evangelization, the most important thing is to turn all those people that come to Mass, and there still are substantial numbers, turn them into evangelizers, right? Is you can't just come to Mass and say, okay, went to Mass, I'm done for the week. No, the Mass ended. Now go and announce the good news. Go and witness with your life. That's the whole point of the Mass, you know? So I would hope the Word on Fire movement could play a role in galvanizing a very powerful lay movement to evangelize the world.